In typical reality TV show fashion, Donald Trump has announced that he will announce his decision on staying in or leaving the Paris Agreement. Let's say he decides to leave it. How does he do it, and what are the legal issues? The answer, coming right up. Before we start, we need to understand something about how treaties work under American law. The president is responsible for negotiating and signing treaties, but they aren't actually law in the United States until the Senate, the upper house of the legislature, approves the treaty by a 2/3 vote. While President Obama signed the Paris Agreement and put it into force as of the 4th of November 2016, the Senate hasn't yet voted to approve it. So it's not yet law. So Trump can just announce he's out and that's that, right? No, because international law doesn't really recognize this distinction. The Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties doesn't allow stepping out of a treaty because of internal legal issues unless the issue is manifest and concerns a rule of internal law of fundamental importance. If Trump were to argue that the requirement of Senate approval is so manifest and fundamentally important that he could get out of this agreement, then the president would lose all credibility in negotiating any treaties in the future. So he's got to get out of the treaty some other way. And there are two ways. The first is the simplest. He can issue notice on the agreement that he intends to leave it. 1 year after notice is given, the United States leaves the agreement. Except the agreement doesn't allow notice to be given until 3 years after the country is joined. So he can't actually say he's out until November 2019, with departure effective the 4th of November 2020. The 3rd of November is the next presidential election, so the politics of that might not be so great for Trump. There's one other way. He could leave all the international treaties on climate change. The Paris Agreement is part of the United Nations Convention on Climate Change from 1994. If a country leaves the convention, they're automatically out of the Paris Agreement. And Trump can give notice today that he's leaving the convention effective in 1 year. But let's go back to that Senate issue. The convention was approved by the Senate. It's the law of the land. Can Trump on his own cancel a treaty? To answer that, let's talk about Taiwan. From 1955 to 1979, the United States recognized Taiwan as the sole government of China. It had a defense treaty with Taiwan to protect it from attack from the communists. In 1979, President Carter announced that the U.S. was leaving this treaty, recognizing the PRC as China. He did it without Senate approval. Several senators sued, and the Supreme Court reviewed the case. It decided that the senators could not sue him, but couldn't decide on why. Some justices said that this was a dispute entirely between Congress and the president, and thus not something a court could review. So the only proper resolution would be for the Senate and the president to fight it out on their own. Others said that because the Senate never expressly disapproved as a whole, they never really challenged the decision and thus conceded the point. We don't know with certainty what would happen if the Senate expressly told the president no. So, could Trump unilaterally announce that he's leaving the UN Convention? Maybe, but it'll spark a constitutional crisis. Hey, thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, fun, or informative, please click like or subscribe. It makes a huge difference in YouTube's algorithms.